Kam, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you end up in Budapest Airport in the first place and then come back to Budapest?
It's a very long story, which I'll try and condense into a shorter story. But I guess like many people in the audience, when I was growing up, I had a fascination with aviation and flying to the extent that when I went to the airport with my siblings and my parents, and that moment of saying farewell or picking people up, it was just an emotional place. So that was my lure into the industry, as it were. And I spent 10 years in the rent-a-car business, trying to progress from there. I moved into the airline industry, and then finally, in 2008 or 9, randomly, a headhunter contacted me out of the blue saying, I'm promoting an airport in Central Eastern Europe. Can't tell you where it is, and it's got a private investor, and we're looking for someone like you. And I haven't looked back since. That was in 2009. So I left, as you may be aware, in 2020, and thanks to the constant pestering of my predecessor, Chris Dinsdale, who was here last year, on the 4th time of him asking me to come back, I came back because I felt there was a lot of unfinished business here to be done.
And what achievements are you most proud of?
It's hard to condense it into one over a spell of 14 years, but I'll try. We have an airline marketing team whose task it is to grow the number of airlines that are flying into Budapest, not just grow the number of new airlines that fly here, but also increase traffic from the existing ones. They spend a lot of their time putting together the right materials and going around the world, convincing airlines, you should fly to Budapest because of X, Y, Z reason. And they have now twice during the tenure that I've been involved won the best airport marketing award in the world. And this isn't something that you buy through advertising. This is something that's voted for by airlines because they get every airport in the world pitching to them. So I'd say that ranks probably right at the top. And more recently, we've won a great award for the best service and quality airport award. So they rank as the two highest at the moment.
Yeah. And going ahead, what are your sort of personal goals and ambitions here in Budapest or and further in your career?
So we embarked on a strategy about 2 years ago under Chris's leadership, which was focused on quality, on sustainability, and making responsible developments of the airport, which was cascaded throughout the organization. And my goals are to continue that strategy for as long as possible because, A, I think it's the right strategy. We went for a period of growth of traffic, which many of us experienced, and a lot of businesses had success from that. But now it became a period of consolidation and focusing on quality, which is why we've seen an enormous amount of change in the airport terminal, which is why we end up winning awards. So my goal, as dull as it may seem, is to keep stability with the current strategy and make sure I take all of our 1,538 direct employees with us on that journey, because it's a good place to be.
And just putting this in context, how big is Budapest Airport in the region, in Central and Eastern Europe?
The key metric that many airports use to measure how big you are is passenger traffic, annual passenger traffic. So now some of you will be aware, Czech Republic, Prague in particular, they were always ahead of us, but then their national airline collapsed. We had that, fortunately or unfortunately, 11 years ago. But now Prague is smaller than Budapest, so they would have been in the lead. But now we rank up there in the region with Warsaw as well, well ahead of Belgrade, well ahead of Bucharest as well. Vienna, you know, if you include them in our catchment, we're behind them because they still have a national airline. But I think regionally we're amongst the top, not just in terms of growth and traffic, but in terms of quality as well. If I put that into context, as my chairman reminds me, not often jokingly, he said, look, we have a landmass bigger than London Heathrow, yet we're only serving 20% of the volume. So that's my target, to get 80% more, somehow.
But so in July, I think you had 1.5 million passengers through the airport. How does that compare with pre-COVID numbers? And when do you think we might get back to the levels we were seeing before COVID?
Yeah, it's getting better every day, in fact. But August is our busiest month every year. And you're right to pick that figure. We had just close to 1.5 million. And that's about 8% less than August 2019. And for the audience, 2019 was the very record year in aviation, not just for Budapest, where we served 16 million passengers. And we constantly were hitting 1.5, 1.6 million passengers in July, August. So we're about 8% down, not just in August, but year to date, we're about 8% down. Or put the other way, we're 92% traffic recovery, which, put it in a wider context, is close to the industry standard, but we could be doing more. And we expect to get to the 2019 figure next year already.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, the Budapest Airport received the Best Airport in Eastern Europe award for the 10th time in a row, based on passenger feedback. You also became the best airport in Europe in your category. You were upgraded to a 4-star airport, and now among the best in Europe. How do you achieve that? What sort of culture are you creating that enables you to achieve those results?
Firstly, this is not a one-man solution, no. Of course. We have, as I said, 1,538 employees at Budapest Airport employed, but we have in the airport ecosystem something like 12,000, which are people who work for airlines, ground handling companies, or other actors at the airport. So it's a question of taking them along with the journey with you. And we set this strategy in place at a time when everything was shut. The beginning of the pandemic, what you saw across many airports around the world, particularly Europe, panic, close down, no more expenditure, lay off staff. We had to do that too. We lost 40% of our staff, which was never a nice thing to do, but it was what we had to do. But we took the opportunity when the airport was closed to invest. So we did, for example, things changing all the floor tiles in the Terminal 2A departures. You can't do that when the terminal's open. No. So we still had a lot of, billions of forints invested. And that was a strategic decision on our part, because when traffic recovered, we wanted to be ready. And we scaled back the staff, as I said, and we already had a vision that passenger recovery would come perhaps ahead of the Western European peers, which is why in 2021, which caught a lot of airports out in Europe, the more advanced ones, we could say, we had limited disruption here, which was great. So in answer to your question, I think we had the vision and the foresight of implementing a strategy when probably the rest of the industry were in panic mode. And fortunately, we had the shareholders' approval to say, continue to spend responsibly, because when we emerge from this, and we will emerge from this, we want to be the best. And now we're reaping the rewards of that with all these wonderful awards.
Well, you mentioned vision. You've also talked about the fact that you're part of a team, but you are the leader of the team. What's your leadership style?
I've been in leadership positions, probably always increasing with responsibility, probably for about 25 years. And I've always adopted the same approach, which is to invest time in working with your leaders yourself. So I, for example, have 10, 12 direct reports who in turn manage big teams. Now, my goal is to give the best possible leadership I can to my 10 direct reports, and invite them and encourage them to cascade that philosophy. And the way I do it is give the most precious commodity I can give them, which is my time, because they've all got big areas of responsibility. And no matter when, and we have a weekly jour fix, and I'm the first one never to cancel it. I say, look, let's meet, let's find time to talk. Yeah. And often you deviate away from just work topics, because when you spend so much time in a workplace, you become a little bit more than just work colleagues. Many friendships have blossomed out of it. And I think that's testimony to the output that they generally create themselves, but also their teams create. I can honestly say, wherever I've worked, you generally find that a lot of people would run through walls for you because they enjoy the culture of our company. Yeah. And again, it's not a one-man show. We have a board and shareholders who believe in that philosophy, and my duty with the 1,538 people directly is to cascade that message of inclusion. And we do so many great things with our staff. We hire Budapest Park, for example, as a box, which many companies do and invite their clients. We give it to our staff. And this is something that, is on our cost, but we see the return in investment and in attitude and in culture. So this is something we'll continue to do.
Maybe a difficult question, but what would Budapest Airport be like under a different leadership style? How do you think that might be different?
Terrible. I think we should. No, I can't talk to what it would be like under a different leadership style. All I can talk to is what Chris, my predecessor, what his philosophy was, what has always been mine, and what we continue on a daily basis here. So you do see, and I use sport as a reference in many things in my life. You mentioned marathon running. I'm not the fastest, but I always get a medal like any runner. I think it's fairly clear when you have a change in organisation, whether it's in an organisation or whether it's in a sports team, results. And if the results aren't going the way your paymasters want to, and that can happen very quickly if the culture dissolves and you lose people. We have a very low turnover rate, which is one of the reasons why we're able to continually improve. Now, if anything, it breaks that imbalance, and change can sometimes do that. If it's not delivered with the right approach, then you end up going the other way.
Let's talk a little bit now about the development of at the airport itself. Tell us about the new destinations that we're now seeing from Budapest, and what's the process for adding new destinations?
We saw this year a lot of recovery, not just in passengers. I mentioned earlier we've had 92% recovery since 2019. Some markets haven't fully recovered, but other ones have gone to about 120% of the seat capacity that we had there. Examples would be Turkey. Turkey's taken off. Istanbul was always connected with several flights per week, or 24 flights per week now. But now we've added to that with other destinations in Turkey. Antalya, for example. Wizz Air have gone there as well. Wizz Air, I'm not going to mention them too many more times. I think their branding speaks for themselves. They're expanding in the Middle East. So that's what's emerged now. A lot of the Middle East is directly connected. Not Bahrain yet, unfortunately.
Not yet.
So they are new destinations to what we have. And everything else incrementally is organically growing very slowly. The process, it may come as a surprise. If we sit and wait, nothing really happens. You have to knock on the airline's doors, which is why I talked about having a great airline marketing team who knock on those doors and get people on board. So for short-haul airlines, they're already planning for next summer. So this summer's done, winter's already, the schedule's done, which is why if you go to any airlines, you can book for this winter, probably not for next summer. So we're already having conversations with airlines for next summer on short-haul, and that's what the team are doing right now, building from a bottom-up basis, so we have visibility in terms of what the traffic's going to be like next year. Long haul's a bit of a slower burn because that's where you align with all of your partners, whether it's the tourism agencies, whether it's the foreign ministry, where you go hand in hand, you say, you should fly to Budapest. And just one point on competition, people think we only compete with Vienna or Prague or Warsaw. It's not true, because if you talk to, let's say, American Airlines, they say we have 12 Dreamliners coming in. We can put them in London, or we can put them in Central Eastern Europe, we can put them in transnational. Why should we put them into Budapest? So, and in that context, you're competing with many airports around the world for precious metal, because an airline these days is very much for profit, and they will always put an aircraft where it's going to generate the most profit. That said, so my team spend a lot of time buying data to put together a business case and present it to the airlines to show not just the toolkit of coming to Budapest as being a wonderful destination for leisure and trade, but also a range of incentives, which is why we try and get them to put Budapest as high up on the radar as possible. So, and it's been a recipe for success so far.
In terms of the terminals, the old Terminal 1 is sleeping. What are your plans for reopening that, and when will Terminal 3 be opened?
Terminal 1, we've got plans, they've been published, we requested permits. That would give us 4 million extra capacity. We didn't want to reopen Terminal 1, it's just that the timelines to open a brand new terminal, Terminal 3, just take a long time to do something of that scale. Terminal 1 we wanted to open in 25, but now it's pushed out to 26 or even 27 because it takes 22 months to get all of the permits. Unfortunately, we haven't got the permits to do that. So we're watching this space because that would give us enough relief until we open Terminal 3. Terminal 3 has been designed with all of the best designers you can think of. Airport planners in the Netherlands who've advised companies or airports around the world on best in class. We've got the design. We want to run an architectural competition, which we hope to do next year, with the best Hungarian designers to come up with more detailed visions. And the shareholders are ready to invest several hundred million, over €1 billion on this. And that, if all things go according to plan, should be open in 2032. So we're ready because the traffic continues to grow and we need to accommodate it.
Well, as we were saying at the very start in the introduction, we then got the issue of sustainability. Now, your predecessor, Chris Dinsdale, last year was talking about sustainability in the airline industry and about the sustainability goals which Budapest Airport has got. Has much happened in the last year?
Yes, you should be aware as an industry, as an aviation industry, that there's a vision to become net zero by 2050. We took it upon ourselves to get there in 2035, so 15 years ahead of the industry's requirement. Now, what's happened between last year and this year, we're pushing ahead with three key streams. One is e-mobility. We've now installed, I think, 138 charging blocks, so not just for one car, one vehicle, but several vehicles at a time, on mainly the airside areas, which means that not just our own staff, but the high-polluting dollies which transport baggage to and from an aircraft are now all electric. We've obliged all of the ground handling companies to invest in electric vehicles. That's one key strand that's showing immediate benefits. Other areas where we've generated good sustainability benefits are we're using, as an airport, we use 62% of our energy was green energy last year. 100% of it is this year. Thinking ahead in the midterm, we've got plans to install a solar farm. That's ready for permitting. And in addition to that is to have geothermal. We've already done some tests with relevant companies who've identified that we do have geothermal opportunities. Their next stage is have to drill down, and this is fascinating for me as a non-technical person, 2 kilometers they have to drill down on airport land. So we've requested the permits. We're somewhere in the queue of getting a permit for that, and if that comes up, then we will be able to not just heat Budapest Airport's offices, but everyone at the airport, and maybe the wider community with that. And that would take us to net zero much faster than we have. So, and of course, in the shops and the concessions at the airport, they're getting away with all of their plastics, getting rid of them all, and they have their own targets and directives as well. So it's looking good at the moment.
That's good to hear. Now, BrainBar, a lot of BrainBar this year is about artificial intelligence, AI, algorithms. You'll hear that all the time over the next couple of days. How do you use data and algorithms at the airport? What's the role of AI at Budapest Airport?
There's not so many things right now. Of course, we have big data, but then with GDPR, we don't own all of the data. So, for example, all the passenger data, we don't get. That belongs to the airline. We have data for when you're traveling through our security system, when you scan your boarding card to get into. So we know that data, but we can't use it at a granular level. What we do use big data for is when we see a mass of people going through security screening, we see heat maps from people's smartphones and from boarding cards. And then if there's a heated situation, for example, on Terminal 2A, security, then immediately our team of staff who are on the ground, they close it and ask people to go around to Terminal 2B. And this has been a big improvement compared to the old days, gut feeling, you know, is 2A or too busy working, because you can see in a control room where the heated situations are. Thinking ahead, we're using big data for predictive passenger arrivals. And it probably comes as a surprise to many people. People, of course, later in the day, they'll come earlier for their flights. But that 6 a.m. wave, people want to spend every possible minute in bed. They're so late to the airport. And this is the one, if I had a special wish, I'd ask everyone to come as early as you can, because you have a limited number of security screening, which incidentally I think we do a great job at. But everyone's coming at the last minute, and it creates a bottleneck. So what we're going to use big data for is give us historic and current data where we can be smarter in terms of opening all of the lanes, opening extra lanes. Just as 2 examples.
Now, a question, a bit more challenging question. There's been a lot of talk about the Hungarian government, the Hungarian state, wanting to buy the airport. What can you tell us about that?
Thank you for the question. I can't talk too much about that topic because I work for Budapest Airport ZRT, as do all of my colleagues here, the few of them that are here. That's a shareholder topic, our owners, but I'm as curious as you are, so I read the newspapers that an offer has been made. I know that there's discussions that are taking place. I'm not a party to those discussions because, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have shares in this business. I wish I did if it was sold. So my goal and the goal of my team and 1,538 people is to continue to do what we do on a daily basis, which is keep motivated, keep focused, keep to our strategic objectives, and continue to have what I regard as the best airport in Europe, and stay away from any noise. So,
and maybe we can finish up by going back to the issue of sustainability. What advice would you give to the audience here on how they can travel more sustainably, how they can air travel more sustainably?
I have this conversation. I have 2 daughters, 23 and 25, who will tell you, like most people, they're the smartest people ever. They're not really working in that field. And I think there's a misperception of how much aviation contributes to carbon emissions. So I think my first suggestion before we get into my tips would be, does anyone know how much carbon emissions are created from aviation? And I think most people will be surprised to learn. Even the most extreme statisticians put it at about 3% of global carbon emissions are coming from aviation. don't misquote me. I'm not saying that's okay. What I'm saying, because the industry have got net 50 targets and we have net 35 targets, we're working towards bringing those down as quickly as possible. So my advice is, if you have no other viable alternative mode of transport, for example, a train to get you from your desired starting point to your finish point, that's not going to take you 20 hours by train and changing 4 times, the difference that makes in carbon emissions is very minimal. So we have only international flights from Budapest. So I would put forward a case that every flight from Budapest is necessary, and it makes difference. Not least of which my own emotional attachment, being somewhere in person is far better than being on a Teams call, particularly when it comes to business. So that said, first tip, if you don't have a viable alternative, accept that flying is the best option. The industry is doing as much as they can to get carbon neutral as quickly as they can. Aircraft is becoming far more efficient than it used to be. Come to the airport on using the most, I guess, green mode of transport possible, and there's many of those. We have a lot of share now cars coming to the airport, as an example. Bring a refillable water bottle. We have so much water stations around the airport, and they can be filled. And also buy something from our concessionaires, because they also have their sustainability goals, and not using plastic at all. So it's safe. Keep everything in perspective, and I think for another generation, we do need to travel, we will need to travel, and I encourage everyone to travel responsibly with those tips.
Kam, thank you very much indeed. But ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a round of applause to Kam Jandu.
Thank you very much.